Senator Byrd was a man of surpassing eloquence and nobility, and I will remember him.
In 1964, incidentally, a year that 3 of our civil rights workers were killed in Mississippi registering blacks to vote, was also the year that civil rights legislation, historic civil rights legislation, was being promoted, and President Johnson wanted to sign it, but nevertheless it was held up, bottled up in the United States Senate by Southern Democrats. And one Democrat in particular, who was the last individual to try to obstruct this legislation, was a guy named Senator Robert Byrd of West Virginia, who for 14 hours and 13 minutes held a filibuster against this civil rights legislation.
Senator Robert Byrd used the nigger word 3 times on a national televised TV show. No outcry at all. Nobody said a thing, at least from the Democrat. No, the Black Caucus didn't say anything, the NAACP, no outcry.
There's no price to pay when you're on the left and you make intemperate racial remarks. There's no price to pay. We say, well, it's just, we're making much to do about nothing.
I will never forget his devotion and his friendship in that critical time. It is almost impossible to imagine the United States Senate without Robert Byrd. He was not just its longest serving member, he was its heart, its soul, and its historian. From my first day in the Senate, I sought out his guidance, and he was always generous with his time and his wisdom. I admired his tireless advocacy for his West Virginia constituents, his fierce defense of the Constitution and the traditions of the Senate, and his passion for a government that improves the lives of the people it serves.
I admire Margaret Sanger enormously. Her courage, her tenacity, her vision. I am really in awe of her.
So she's in awe of Margaret Sanger.
The woman who is responsible for bringing birth control into the mainstream and making it legal in the United States was a woman named Margaret Sanger. Now, this Margaret Sanger was a eugenicist.
So where did this campaign for birth control as a means of better health and empowering the family for the Black community originate? We have to understand something called eugenics, which was basically people's thoughts that the unfit should not reproduce and the fit should. So from this background of eugenics, someone named Margaret Sanger, and if you're not familiar with her, she's the founder of Planned Parenthood. Margaret Sanger was a proponent of eugenics, and she believed that the racially unfit should not reproduce. And during her time in the early 1900s, who would be the racially unfit? Well, they'd be African Americans.
She believed that white people were superior to other races. And she, like the Nazis, believed that certain races were inferior to others and that we need to encourage those people not to reproduce so that we can just have the good people reproduce and the fittest and the strongest people reproduce.
So in comes Margaret Sanger with her slick talk. But in reality, Margaret Sanger thought of these people as human waste, which really they should not be reproducing anymore because they're just like weeds. And so she came in with her talk of family planning and better health to try to basically trick the community into buying her program, which is really sterilization, birth control, and abortion.
She started an organization called the Birth Control Federation of America. And do you know what the Birth Control Federation of America later changed its name to? Planned Parenthood, which I call Planned Baronhood. Okay, Planned Parenthood, that wicked organization that conservatives rail against for being pro-abortion and pro-death, was actually originally known as the Birth Control Federation of America. So you can see the type of evil people that are behind this agenda. She's the one who pushed this through and got it legal in the United States. She's the one that promoted it and made it mainstream. This wicked, evil person named Margaret Sanger, who is an evolutionist and who was not a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ by any stretch of the imagination.
Mrs. Margaret Slee, president of America's Planned Parenthood Federation, maintains that European women should stop having babies for the next 10 years.
Don't you think such a theory, such a radical theory, is antisocial?
On the contrary, it seems to me that it is more practical and humane. But from my view, I believe that there should be no more babies.
Do you believe in sin? When I say believe, I don't mean believe in committing sin. Do you believe there is such a thing as sin?
Well, I think the greatest sin in the world is bringing children into the world that have disease from their parents, that have no chance in the world to be a human being, practically. Delinquents, prisoners, all sorts of things just marked when they're born. That, to me, is the greatest sin.
I just want to read some statistics about this shedding of innocent blood. Well, let's look at this. From the years 1882 to 1968, 3,000, well, roughly, those that were recorded, 3,446 of us were lynched in the United States. Okay? That was called, referred to as the lynching century. Tuskegee did a study about lynching in America and kept tabs on the incidents of lynching. We were strung up on trees, all right, by KKK and other legions and just mobs. All right, you look at the Tulsa riots of 21, and you look at various riots that went on in northern cities, etc. All right, but listen to this. That number, 3,446, is surpassed in less than 3 days by abortion. See, it took that long to lynch that many black people, but that number is surpassed in 3 days. It's time to wake up.